pray. As we recognize and open to the Almighty Spirit, called many names, and as we learn in the Tao Te Ching, as soon as we name it, it no longer is. So we just open up to that life force, whether we call it God or the Tao, doesn't matter. What matters is, can you feel it within you? In your mind, in your heart, and your belly. That incredible divine energy of nothing but goodness is located within each and every one. And as we acknowledge it, we begin to realize it, and as we realize it begins to affect all parts of our thoughts and our words and our emotions, called being in the flow. And in this moment, if we say yes to that, and say yes to that life, and feel it, and let it flow. So it is. Namaste. Someone asked me this week, how do you feel about not finishing the Tao Te Ching? And I said, I'm okay with it. As you know, it has 81 verses. And we're going to end at 35 because we're going to move into something different going into June and July. But at some point we may pick it up, because what I hope that you've recognized, as the verses get clearer, it begins to spiral to a different place, and we begin to look at consciousness a little bit differently than we may have in the past. So starting next Sunday, we're going to be moving into a book study that we're going to do through June and July. The book is called The Desire Factor. It's written by Christy Whitman. I know some of you have had difficulty getting it. It's been a big seller. I've picked this book for a couple reasons. Number one is she's a young woman who has two fairly young children. So it's kind of a different take on the whole energy piece and how it connects to spirituality. So I hope that you enjoy it. I've had some people already finish the book. So it's not a real difficult book to study, but I'm going to layer on top of that some of the laws of the universe. So we take the laws and the principles that she's applying in here, and I think we're going to take a whole nother look as we go through June and July around energy and how it connects with spirituality. So I hope that you jump in. We're going to start Sunday, and then Tuesday night here, we're going to be back having the Go Deeper to Go Higher classes at 7 o'clock. So we haven't been in the sanctuary together. I don't know, we've done Zoom now for back in the fall, I guess it was. So I'm looking forward to that, because the energy when we come together is a little different than it is on Zoom. And I think in connection with what we're doing in the book, I personally believe, and I said this I think last Sunday, in my 25 years of coaching and teaching, I think this will be the most powerful couple weeks that I've ever been part of. And even the article we put out, The Natural Awakening, I've gotten responses back from folks that don't even know Unity of Harrisburg or don't know me, and are like, I want to know more information. So it seems to be connecting with people in a different way. So if you've got friends that are struggling with anything in life, this is about bringing your desire. And one of the things I'm going to welcome you, invite you for next week, is to begin thinking this week about what desire do you want to manifest, do you want to bring forth in your life over these next 2 months? Give it some time, really think about it. And I said last week, there's two kinds of people. There's kinds that want to go for the big enchilada all at once. It's like, well, if I'm going to do the work, I'm going for it. And then there's others that like to take little pieces and say, well, I want to prove that. When I prove that, then I have faith and trust in the next step and that. It doesn't matter which one fits for you, but give it some thought this week. In the next 2 months, what would you be excited about if you brought forth into your life? And it can be material, it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual. So look at your life and just say, what, over the next 60 days, what do I really want to manifest that I don't have right now? And as you begin to get clear on that, because we're going to talk about focus and clarity, and what does it mean to have split energy and all those kind of things that have stopped a lot of people in not manifesting what they want in life. So give it some thought. We're going to get started in it right off. And I'm looking forward to it. I think you're going to find it very, very interesting. Along that line, and why we're headed there, one of my spiritual mentors, I love his way he thought and the quotes that he brought forward, is Einstein says this: everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. If that's really true, then I think it makes a lot of sense that at Unity Harrisburg we're going to focus on energy. Don't you think? If that's really all there is, and if somehow we've missed how to connect with that and manifest that in our own lives in a different way, that's a piece that we really need to understand, and that's what my objective is, and I hope that everyone goes there and will be able to fulfill everything they're looking for. I don't know how many of you saw this. This came out this week. You know, I've been talking about we only know 4% of the universe. We don't know 4% of ourselves. 96% we don't know, and I know your ego's probably been arguing, well, I know more than 4%. Well, no, you don't. You just think you do. So did I. But we just discovered the oldest spiral galaxy. You know, the Milky Way that we live in is a tiny one, right? And this spiral galaxy, that photo is not a photo. It came through radio transmission. We still can't do photography that far away. I forget how many million light years. But this spiral galaxy originated 12.4 billion years ago. And I bring that I want you to think about, what is 1,000 years ago? We were in the Dark Ages, right? 1,000,000 years ago is 1,000 of thousands years ago. That's 1,000,000 years. And to get to 1 billion is 1,000 million years. It's just 1 billion. And this is 12.4 billion years ago. What we don't know is so expansive and so powerful and so large. But as we're beginning to slowly, our consciousness as a human race is changing, where we're starting to understand this and know that there are absolute universal laws that apply everywhere in the universe. And so what I'm doing in this study is I'm taking one of the universal laws and applying it to one of the principles. So I think it's so important that we understand these universal laws, how they affect us and how we can use them. They've been there forever, and we get free will choice to choose to use them or not. And that's why when you put these two together, I think it's the most powerful thing that we've ever done, at least in the 4 years that I've been here. 12.4 billion years ago. That brings in a whole new understanding of eternal, does it not? And if you really get it, that we're not just physical, we're spiritual, but we're also energetic beings, and energy never dies. It is so huge and so powerful and so large. And as we begin to connect with it in a different way, you watch what begins to happen in your life. But we have to recognize and acknowledge it so that we can begin to implement it. I showed this last week. You're going to see this through June and July. It's the whole idea of the energy spectrum. We now have the tools scientists do to hook you up and measure you at what vibration that you are emanating into the universe. And you can see the scale there. It's probably hard to see on that side. It's actually measurable when you are in a place of guilt. pretty low on the spectrum. And they can measure when you are in bliss. And you begin to vibrate. If the whole thing is energy and nothing but energy, you can begin to see the importance of where during your day, where during your week, you are emanating in vibration and frequency on this spectrum. And as you can see, as you go up, we move from contraction to expansion, from fear to love, to the pure Tao and up into ultimate consciousness. I don't know about you, but that's where I want to live. I want to live at the very, very top, in the ultimate consciousness, beyond the Tao. And it's available to each and every one of us as we begin to understand this and implement these practical tools that we're going to be talking about. You see, I'm getting a little excited about jumping into next week. But I got to finish the Tao today, which is also exciting. Now, 2,600 years ago, Lao Tzu wrote this verse. This verse is not going to make the NRA very happy today. And it's going to address some of the things that's going on in this country. 2,600 years ago, weapons are the tools of violence. All decent men detest them. Therefore, followers of the Tao never, ever use them. Arms serve evil. They are the tools of those who oppose wise rule. Use them only as a last resort, for peace and quiet and dearest to the decent man and woman's heart. And to him even a victory is no cause for rejoicing. He who thinks triumph beautifully is one with the will to kill, and one with the will to kill shall never prevail upon this world. It is a good sign when men or women's higher nature comes forward, a bad sign when lower nature comes forward. With the slaughter of multitudes, we have grief and sorrow. Every victory is a funeral, and when you win a war, you celebrate by mourning. Wow. Some things have not changed in the human experience, has it? 2,600 years. Last weekend, 3 days, we had 66 mass shootings in this country in 3 days. A mass shooting is defined by 4 people either injured or killed. It doesn't count how many were only 3, 2, and 1. There is something totally amiss that Lao Tzu saw 2,600 years ago. And just think of where we would be if we had paid attention to the teachings and brought forth this whole idea of love instead of hatred. Because hatred leads to violence. Always has, always will. Lao Tzu states unequivocally that the implements of violence are evil and the Tao is about life and weapons are about death. The Tao is a creative force and weapons are about destruction. I don't know about you, but my heart weeps today when we have elected officials that we don't even have senators with enough courage to stand up and have a bipartisan investigation of the attack on the Capitol, where 5 people died. 11 of those coward senators left so they wouldn't be on the record to vote. Who have we sent to represent us, the people? Cowards that cannot even stay and vote. Something is amiss in this whole process that we're living through. Now, we can go down into negativity about it, but we have to bring the light in. We have to have a consciousness that will bring justice to what happens and begin to hold accountable these people that go to Washington to run away and not vote. The massive proliferation of guns in our society is a move from the highest nature of our own consciousness. We must stop putting our heads in the sand. We have to get involved as those a part of light and justice in this society. It is a downward spiral into violence and degradation. We are watching it every month. See the use of any physical or verbal weapons as unwanted responses. It's not just about the guns. It's not just about the physical. We can use weapons of our mouth to be just as damning. If it's not truth, if it's lies, it is just as damning as if we pulled out a gun. Let's bring back civil to often make authentic the root word of civilization. Civil is going away. It is not cool to be civil. Somehow we have to find a way as the light workers of higher consciousness. I hope we are. To stand somehow. We can no longer stand aside and say, well, it's the elected people in D.C. We have to find a way to get involved. I don't know the answers, but I can tell you what I see. And one of my gifts is be able to see trends. I mean, it did me well when I was in the investment business. I can see trends of society right now that are not good. And somehow we're going to have to get involved and bring the consciousness to another place. St. Thomas of Aquin said this, how is it that they live for eons in such harmony, those billions of stars? They don't fight. They don't shoot each other. They exist in harmony. When most people can barely go a minute without declaring war in their minds against someone that they know, there are wars where no one marches with a flag, though that does not keep casualties from mounting. Our hearts irrigate this earth. We are fields before each other. How can we live in harmony? First, we need to know we are all madly in love with the same God. This country was established in God we trust. Where is that? Where is it today? You can't find it almost anywhere. And what he was saying so many hundreds of years ago, we need to get back to being madly in love with the same God. And that's a God of love and a God of peace and a God of harmony. This is Wayne Dyer's take on this chapter, on this verse. He says, allow my highest nature to come forward by bringing love to the places where I used to live in hatred. That's something you and I can do. Look back and see the people or the ideas or whatever you used to hate. And begin, if you can't move in love with the stuff out of your own past or the stuff out of the people that you live around, then there is no way that we can bring love to a higher level to this community and to this country. And the piece I came up with to do the Tao, say a prayer every time you hear someone else was killed in this country. But pray for the victim as well as the attacker. And pray for the families that are left behind. Whether they were the attacker or they were the victim, you have a whole set of families and friends that are in mourning and grief at the highest level, cannot believe that it happened in that Walmart or in that place of work where they went that day to do what they do every day and don't come back. We can at least offer up prayers and light and love for all of that. I don't know what else we can do. Verse 32, the eternal Tao has no name. Although simple and subtle, no one in the world can master it. If kings and lords could harness them, the 10,000 things would naturally obey, and heaven and earth would rejoice with the dripping of sweet dew. Everyone would live in harmony, not by official decree, but by their own goodness. All of us were created in what? In good. All of us at the core have the divine within us. That's goodness. And somehow we have to get back to the core of who we are and who we are as a nation. Once the whole is divided, the parts need names. This goes back to another understanding of oneness. You remember in the very beginning it says, when we name God, it's no longer God. It begins to become the things of us humans, putting meaning to it by names. There are parts and names, There are already enough names, don't you think? Know when to stop. Know when to reason. When reason sets limits to avoid peril. Rivers and streams are born of the ocean, and all creation is born of the dower of God. All creation comes from that goodness. So if we come from it, way back in Genesis, in the likeness and in the image of the goodness, you and I were created. We have to get back in touch with the goodness of our own selves and let that begin to emanate and touch all the people we touch during the week. Only that way do I believe, from a ground roots level, do we begin to change the consciousness in this country. Just as all water flows back to become the ocean, all creation flows back to become the Tao, or God. These teachings are part of why I don't have a fear of death. Because energy cannot die. It's eternal. Where were you and I 12.4 billion years ago when that galaxy was originated? We existed somewhere in energy. We've always been. We will always be. That takes away from me the number one fear of most humans. Number one fear is death. Number two, public speaking. There isn't. Energy doesn't die. And when we know that, we'll simply go back to God or go back to the Tao. Here, Lao Tzu describes the ecstasy of being on the same page with Source. You know when you're on the same page with Source, don't you? You know. Now, some of us like to say, I don't know. But you do. You feel it. You know when you're in alignment with all goodness. You also know when you're out of alignment, do you not? And that's what self-awareness is. That's part of what we're going to work on these next 2 months, is becoming much higher self-aware of when we're off what I call the beam. When we're out of connection with the Source, out of connection with the divine. This is called the divine gift or grace. You can't earn it. It's a gift. But you have the choice not to accept it. You have to receive the gift to live in grace. The challenge, how to live in this physical world and maintain ourselves in the flow of the Tao. How many besides me know this is a challenge? We can sit here and look at this all day long. And we can do affirmations all day long. But if we're not in the flow of the energy of the Tao, of God, of Source, then all of this is not even worth the time we take. And it's only through your choice and my choice do we decide for ourselves. No one else can decide for you if we want to live there or not. You have to have the want to. And you're going to hear that from me over and over and over again. We can talk about all the principles of energy, but if you don't have the want to align yourself and do something different than what you've been doing, you will get absolutely nothing different than what you've been getting. A key is maintaining gratitude for all you have while maintaining a positive expectancy of what is to come. That's living here in the moment, in the now, and that's where we have to live, because that's where the energy is, and that's where God exists. But as we do that here and now, that here and now becomes tomorrow, and it becomes the next day, and it becomes the next week, and it becomes the next month. But it's only the now, in this moment, that begins to expand for us. Sitting here and analyzing and worrying and anxious over what's coming in the future takes you out of this moment, takes you out of the now. That's what worry does, right? And we know what the past stuff does. That's the guilt and the shame and the blame and the victimhood and all that kind of stuff. Either one of those takes you out of the now. If we push, if we create more resistance in our lives, more resistance repels what we want. Feel and experience the goodness of Source. How many times in a day do you just simply take a deep breath and bring in the goodness? Feel it. Acknowledge it. Connect with it. It's all good when we're in that flow. And it's all not so good when we get outside that flow. Pay attention to the daily flow of your life and look for a new joyous feeling within you. Every one of us has choice to take another thought, which brings another emotion than the one we're steeped in. And when you look at that spectrum, you cannot go from shame to bliss. Not possible. You go from the bottom up by incremental steps. And we're going to talk about how to do that in the next couple of weeks. We can't jump from here to there. It just isn't possible. We have to take the steps to get there, and those steps are easy. Eventually, they get us to where we want to go. Again, Wayne Dyer says this: I trust in the perfect goodness of the Tao to guide and direct me wherever it will. I allow my thoughts and ideas to be carried by the great wave of the Tao. How many of you are allowing your thoughts and feelings to be carried? That's a form of letting go, is it not? You know, we hear this all the time: let go, let God. But how do we practice that? The way you practice it is allow your thoughts and your feelings to be carried in the great wave of the Tao that flows through you and me all the time. Find time today to go for a walk and have no agenda. Feel the free flow of the Tao. For me, this has to happen in the woods. When I feel the trees and the leaves and the ferns and the birds and whatever, that free flow of the Tao, I don't have an agenda. I can just be and feel it. Find your place so that you have a way to connect to this goodness every day if you can. Doesn't have to be long. It doesn't take long. 5-10 minutes there, and you're just like, oh, I'm centered again. Let freedom be your guide. Are you free in what you're doing? Move with the eternal 12.4 billion years of perfect God or Tao. Be it now, in this moment of time. Verse 33. One who understands others has knowledge, and one who understands him or herself has wisdom. This is one of the most repeated 2 lines of the Tao Te Ching. Mastering others requires force. Mastering self needs strength. If you realize that you have enough, you are truly rich. This is a whole notion of contentment, fulfilled. Not what our ego wants. Our ego always wants more. But the Tao is like, no, just here, right now, is enough. Take a breath, find gratitude, and be okay that it's enough. Right? Contentment is a good place. Fulfillment is a really good place to be. One who gives him or herself to this position surely lives long. One who gives themselves to the Tao surely lives forever. You are eternal. I'm eternal. And as we begin to understand we're spiritual, energetic beings, we begin to understand what that means and how it flows. A Tao-oriented life, or God-oriented life, if you wish, focusing and becoming aware of oneself, that self-awareness. Release all concern and blame of others. Not so easy, is it? We've been domesticated to do this really well. Right? We're always getting up in somebody else's stuff. Well, why are they doing that? They should be. We start shooting on them and ourselves. No, the Tao's saying, let it go. Know that there is no they out there that can ever control or upset you. Oh boy, we're moving away from victim now in a big way, are we not? No one, no they can ever upset you or me. That's a stance that takes you to harmony. But it's one that you have to make for yourself. Because we've been trained, it's they did it, right? They can be a whole list. Parents, teachers, political parties, other nations, There's no they. Upset, it can only come from you. It's your thought leading to emotion of upset. And when you begin to take a move from victim and begin to take ownership to become master or sage, you will never ever say again that someone else has upset you. You will recognize that you had a thought that gave you an emotion that upset you. This is a lot of work. But it is the most powerful thing you and I can begin to do because it gives us freedom. The bondage of being tied to they and the victimhood. And I'm going to talk in the next couple of weeks about the triangle of drama, which is how we get ourselves engaged in victimhood. As we begin to break that, we move to freedom. And no one can ever upset you again. Ever. That's freedom, at least the way I define it. If I can go through my day in peace and harmony and no one, no matter what they say or do, can upset me, I have my personal power. I'm the sage, I'm the master of this life, of this universe. And no one else. Go beyond blaming them and release the need to understand them. That's the next step. When you start to no longer judge, then you start to analyze. Well, I wonder what they're thinking. None of your business. It's none of mine. And when I learn to stay out of their business and stay focused on mine, it leads me to freedom much faster. But that's the next step, is it not? How many spent some time this week analyzing them? They, them, the same thing. Right? Well, I'm analyzing them just because I wouldn't need to understand them. No, you don't. Understanding them is just going to get you upset even more. By pulling back and going to center, we no longer give up our power to let whatever they do, because they're going to... Look, one thing I've learned, I just hit 68 years this week. I've learned some things in 68 years. One of the things I've learned is they're going to keep being and doing whatever they've been doing. Right? My brother's going to keep being and doing what he's been doing for 66 years. And the people in your families and the people in your friends are not going to change unless one thing is in place, and that's a want to change. If they don't have a want to change, they're going to keep being and doing everything they've been doing and doing. If they've been upsetting me for 68 years, guess what I'm going to keep getting? More upset. So I have to change that. I have to take control of it. I have to own it. Say, nobody's going to upset me again. That's a big statement. It's a big intention. But it's one that's available to every one of us to do that. And one of the steps in that is giving up the need to try and understand why they would do that. Not my business. As you allow others the freedom to be themselves, you and I become free. We can never, ever be free if we're holding other people in bondage in our judgments and criticism and condemnation. We are locked in emotionally, and those cords are strong between us. Freedom comes from us freeing them from us. And then we go free. There's no other way to become emotionally free. When we judge others and ourselves, the Tao slows down. You can put God in there, spirit, whatever you like for you. It slows down. Why? Because you are no longer in alignment with the energy. Goodness cannot go where badness lies. Never. It repels. So until we get back to get in alignment with the goodness, we will not feel and see the goodness in our own lives. It slows down, and if you're self-aware, you can feel it slow down. Look, I wouldn't try this a lot, but you can go home this week, go home today, and you can sit down and someone that really upsets you, you sit there and you judge them. And you watch how the Tao slows down, or the source, or God. That energy will start to slow down and dwindle down to nothing. Because it will not be where that is. And until we drop it and we begin, then we can go back to expansion. It's the contraction of the energy to the expansion of the energy that goes on day after day in our lives. I'm replacing my desire for power over others with my efforts to understand and master myself In any and all situations, the things I love, I have learned to leave alone. Let them be. Consciously have a conversation with someone who causes you distress. You all have one or two in your life. Have a conscious conversation with them. And silently ask the Tao or God to flow. And then observe them, but also your feelings. What happens when you go to that place where you're seeing nothing but the Tao flow through them, nothing but light and love, no matter what they say? And you'll begin to get what I'm talking about, the freedom to move beyond. Verse number 34. The great way is universal. It can apply to the left or the right. All beings depend on it for life. Even so, it does not take possession of them. It accomplishes its person. It makes no claim for itself. It covers all creatures like the sky, but does not dominate them. All things return to it as their home, but it does not lord over them. It can be called great. The sage imitates this conduct. By not claiming greatness, the sage achieves greatness. Human ego wants to call ourselves great. What the Tao is saying here is, don't get involved in that. You don't need to call yourself great. Lao Tzu says, ask us to reevaluate our perception of greatness. The human definition of greatness is someone who stands out from the crowd. The Tao's definition of greatness is it's all-encompassing, and every living being or thing originated and lives in that greatness. Those people who upset you, can you see the greatness in them? Because as you see the greatness in them, you open up to more greatness within yourself. Begin to see the holiness that holds the galaxies together. How sacred, how holy, to create a spiral galaxy 12.4 billion years ago is the very same power, the very same intelligence, and the very same energy that's flowing through you. Trust it. Discontinue deciding what anyone else should or shouldn't be doing. I know no one in here does this, but I find myself sometimes doing it. Not a good thing. Discontinue deciding what anyone else should or shouldn't be doing. Not my job. It's not. Discover your new definition of greatness. What's your definition of greatness? By not claiming greatness, I achieve greatness. Find someone who exhibits a life, as we just explained in this verse, and silently acknowledge them within yourself. You are great. And now feel how you feel as you only focus on the Tao flowing through them. See how it changes for you. See how you feel and see how you think when you're able to see that begin to flow through someone who upsets you. And finally today, verse 35. All men or women will come to him who keeps to the one. They flock to him or her who receives no harm. For in them they find peace, security, and happiness. The one who's in alignment, who's attached to the one. Whether you call it God or the Tao or Spirit, doesn't matter. Music and dining are passing pleasures, yet they cause people to stop. How bland and insipidous are the things of this world when one compares them to the Tao. When you look for it, there's nothing to see. When you listen for it, there's nothing to hear. When you use it, it cannot be exhausted. He's talking about moving from our five senses to our internal spiritual eyes and ears. So what's pleasurable to you? When I ask that question, what gives you pleasure? You've got a list, right? Typically, the answers will be something that satisfies your senses, one of the five senses. And what Lao Tzu is saying here is I'm asking you to go another level. Can you define what provides you transcendent pleasure? Transcendent being beyond the physical. What gives you pleasure beyond the five senses? This is a question most people don't answer. Number one, because they never ask. What gives you pleasure in life beyond your five senses? Begin to notice that bliss is always with you even when the delicacies are out of sight. Bliss is always there. And you don't need anything in the physical to experience it. You just need to choose. Begin to really understand that you are an energy being beyond the physical and its pleasures. As we begin to look to more transcendent things, some of this begins to not be so important anymore. What are the Tao's pleasures? Begin to really understand that you are energy being. I just talked about that. And practice this transcendent thankfulness for everything in your life. You know, and coaching people, they'll say, well, I don't have anything I'm really grateful for. I said, well, how about the breath of air? Let's start with something fundamental. If you don't have it, you're gone from this planet. You know, there are things that we can be grateful for that are we take so much for granted, that if we just stop, and we really do. Open yourself up, it says, to unlimited love, to lavish abundance, to deep contentment and peace, to harmony and balance, to joy and happiness, to being your Tao self. Beyond human being is another place that you and I can go, and we can live 24/7. Wayne Dyer says, when I look for it, there's nothing to see. When I listen for it, there's nothing to hear. When it's used, it cannot be exhausted. This is the great Tao. Beyond the senses, beyond the five, transcendent beyond the physical. And everything we're going to do the next 60 days is about transcendent beyond the physical. It's about the energy of it. Go on a 24-hour fast. When you feel hunger pains, switch your thoughts to gratitude for the eternal force which is always with you. Try it this week. Go for one day. No food. Find and feel this force that's flowing through you, and this force is never hungry. Never. It's a way to be able to disengage a bit from the physical, from the five senses, and really connect with this flow of energy that's going through you. There's a lot of research being done around fast. For those of you who are golf fans, Phil Mickelson was almost 51 years old when he won a major last week. And he gives credit to his 6-day fast. He has a water, coffee fast that reset his body and his mind. We're seeing more and more science around stopping giving the physical, stopping giving the senses what they want, and getting connected with something else. He focused like I've never seen him. I've been watching him play his whole career. And somehow in that tournament, he was able to get the job done. Probably wouldn't have 5 years ago in his career, or 10 years ago. I watched him blow many leads, but not this time. He said, I reset my body and I reset my mind taking this 6-day fast. And he did it again right before the tournament, I think 2 weeks before. So interesting, there's a lot of information and science out there about us learning to move away from these senses. And I wanted to end today with a Rumi quote. As you know, I love his poetry. Wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life. Whenever we're off the beam, one of the fastest ways I know is just sit down and take a breath and find something to be grateful for. And every one of us has some, at least one. And as we focus on the gratitude, the energy, the thoughts and feelings, the emotions, the energy within us begin to change. And we begin to attract, right? Universe of attraction. But wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life. Let's go to silence. As we take a deep breath, and then let it out. What are you grateful for today? you can't find anything, be grateful for the breath of spirit that you breathe in to nourish your mind and your body. Or grateful for this incredible force called the Tao, or God, divine spirit, that flows through you 24/7, forever. 12.4 billion years ago, 12.4 billion years into the future. And in that crystal river that flows through you, or a waterfalls, or whatever you feel, just take it in today. Breathe it in, feel it, and have this incredible sense of gratitude. So grateful. So grateful. And as you move through this week, find your gratitude. And in finding the gratitude, you're doing the Tao. Going with the flow. And let that guide you. Let that light and that love and that sense of gratitude be the freedom and the harmony that you feel, and the joy and the happiness through this week.